Located in a typical Italian town lays a grand abandoned castle. This castle may look ancient, but it's actually not as old as it may seem. Join us and discover the rather unique past of this large abandoned castle. We started our exploration at an access point, somewhere in the small town surrounding the castle. The castle was located on top of the mountain, so we had to find a way to climb to the mountain first. We quickly found a path through the heavy vegetation. Let's find out where the path leads to. Right now we are in the former park, by the way. Nearly the whole mountain was covered with multiple plants and vineyards back in the day. Over 50 gardeners were also full-time active on the property. The vegetation was getting pretty heavy, which made it somewhat hard to stick to the small path. After conquering many thorns and a large bed of stingy nettle, we finally came across a road. We were pretty much positive that this would lead us to the castle. Finally, we got to the Grand Castle. The property which you are looking at right now was constructed in a typical regional castle design. We'll go more in depth into the design and history when we get inside. First we got to the front gate, which contained this small typical medieval style door. Once inside we were greeted by the stunning grand staircase. These contained all sorts of beautiful wall paintings.
Wow.
What you're looking at right now may look old and historic, but it's actually quite the opposite. This here is the castle in 1915, but let's go back in time 15 years. There is no castle, just an ordinary looking Italian town. You may already realize it, but the whole castle is actually completely fake and has no connection to the medieval times. With this twist, we will head up the grand staircase. The grand staircase is one of the many highlights of the grand castle. With over 150 rooms, we still had a lot to cover. Upstairs we got into a rather nice hallway. This hallway leads to the other wings of the large building. Many not so original looking walls were located behind this hallway. It kind of looked like a sloppy renovation. So what really happened here, and what even is this place? To answer this question, we need to head to the late 1800s. A person named Riccardo was born in a small village. Riccardo was very driven and opportunistic. This led him to a job at an industrial scale wood processing plant. He would establish his own wood processing plant not far from where the castle is now. And this at a young age of 26. This was a rather good decision for Riccardo. And a couple of years later he also invested in a large cement plant. These two factories were opened just when Italy began to industrialize, which meant incredible wealth for the young entrepreneur. In these booming times, Riccardo married a lady named Cesarina. During the wedding, Riccardo promised Cesarina that they will be living in a castle together. This started the dream of building a large medieval style castle. We continue with the history later in the video. We first need to take a look at this stunning room. This room is called the Atrium of the castle. You can also truly witness the traces of the young age of the castle. On the frescoes many modern inventions are pictured, like chemistry and mechanization. The lack of wallpaper here reveals drafts of a wall ornament, which was located somewhere in this room. After the wedding, the construction of the castle was started. In just 4 years, the fairy tale castle was finished, which meant that the couple could finally move into their large estate. The opening ceremony was celebrated by dressing up in medieval style clothing. We went back to the large staircase, where we went up one more level. This is the most upper floor in the castle, where we hope to find some bedrooms. Around the corner we didn't see any bedrooms. Instead we discovered a large open space. Which also contained some traces of decay. I'm still not sure what kind of room this is. It somewhat looks like a chapel or a general communal space. It sure is a nice highlight though. Shortly after the castle was finished, the First World War broke out. This meant that the import of raw materials for Riccardo's factories became a lot harder. After the war, the production recovered relatively well. What was different though was the government. Benito Mussolini, the leader of the Italian Fascist Party, was quickly seizing complete power over Italy. If you forgot about who Mussolini was, then you will probably recognize his closest ally. Riccardo was not a fan of him and his economic policies, which caused mass inflation. So Riccardo sent a critical letter to Mussolini, saying that he was ruining the Italian economy. Mussolini's response was that he harmed the Italian economy, which led to Riccardo going to prison. The castle was also seized by the government. We started a journey to go to the top of one of the 3 towers. The objective was to get a nice overview of the castle and the landscape. Right now we are on top of one of the towers. After the war, the castle was bought by a priest, who converted it into a tuberculosis rehab center. This went on until the late 70s, when the castle was once again seized by the local government. After this, the castle stood vacant. A couple of years later, something completely bizarre was found. A French gang had converted the castle into a massive drugs plant. A fortune worth of drugs and money was found. 44 people were caught. After this, the castle was finally restored by the local government. In the early 2000s, the castle was bought by an investor who wanted to convert the castle into event spaces. Around 2010, the project fell through, which meant that the castle was finally abandoned. Right now the castle is in limbo. Only time will tell what will happen to the castle. It might not be historic, but it still has an incredible story and a unique genesis. Do you want to see early previews on what's coming next to the channel? If that's the case, follow the official Instagram page or Facebook page of Forgotten Buildings. Check it out at Forgotten Buildings.